Hi, I'm Granville Haworth. I was born in England. I came out to New Zealand in 1974. Started wood turning in 95, but I've been involved in wood most of my life. My father was a builder, so I was involved with helping him in my teenage years and up to the time I left England. I did a 4-year woodworking course in the UK before I came to NZ. I have since done several other courses, one with a well-known woodturner in England called Melvin Firmiger. I did a full week's masterclass course with him, which was very interesting indeed. And then here I was taught the wood turning craft by Shane Hewitt. I did 10 weeks with Shane, which really put me head and shoulders above most of the members without being, big-headed about it. The majority were self-taught, and I've always recommended that anybody that comes into the wood turning scene gets proper tuition, so they don't get into bad habits or anything like that. So those are my thoughts on how I got into the wood turning. I first came to New Zealand to Forest Products at Kinleith, was one of the engineers there working in the pulp mill. Worked there for 7 years, then moved up to Whangarei to the oil refinery, where I was one of the engineers out there, and I took early retirement in '98. So wood turning now is like a pretty big part of my life, as well as just turning for commission work. I do tuition and I supply to several outlets in New Zealand. Going on to the wood turning, the type of things I turn mainly are bowls. Just 2 examples of some of the items I do, and also platters, which is this large piece here. I have to say, one of my finer pieces that I've turned. It's got a resin inlay around the rim with carved fish, seaweed, feathers and feet, and in the middle is the heron. All these are carved out of deer antler, and then the rim, they're set in the resin. Piece of swamp cowrie, came from the Dargaville area. Very nice grain, nice to finish and everything. The big platters that I turn on this big lathe here, which I built several years ago. The gearbox part here, believe it or not, came from the old glassworks down Port Road. So I've built it up. It's operated, it's got a 3-phase motor, which is operated through a variable speed controller, an extrovert, which converts single phase to 3-phase. Very nice lathe, bolted to the concrete, very heavy, does not move when you put an out of balance piece in, so it's a very sturdy lathe. And yes, it's done a lot of platters for me, which is what I think one of my specialities. Recently I've done a carving for an exhibition at Matakoi Kauri Museum. This is ancient kauri again, stands about 2 feet tall, carving of a seahorse. This lathe, DVR lathe, variable speed, 2 horsepower unit, very stable on a good solid bench, so it can handle reasonably out of balance pieces without shake, rattling and rolling. I have a dust extractor with a very state-of-the-art filter unit on the top. That's connected up to the ducting system, which runs around the back of the bench, round the workshop, connected to both lathes, and when I do any sanding with a belt sander, I connect it to the belt sander. Helps to minimise the creation of dust, which is a health issue, and this big extract here I bring round when I'm sanding the piece, so it sucks the dust through there, and it's also connected through the slot in the lathe, so some of the dust goes down through into the ducting system and away to the filtering unit. I've got two grinders. This is the grinder I use most of the time, although it could just do with the wheel dressing up, keep it clean, sharpens the tools a lot better. And then I've got a wet grinder here, which also has a leather wheel, which is good for sharpening your carving tools. I have a grinding jig, which I find very useful. I do very little hand grinding. I find this very quick. You can set it and you get the same grind every time. Minimal removal of material off the gouge. Probably my favourite tool that I use most of the time is this 13mm gouge. That is the bevel I use on the gouge, and anybody that's starting in the wood turning game, this is probably the best gouge to start with. Versatile, it does most of the things I do, both on small bowls, the large platters and everything. Every wood turner falls into the same trap that they finish up with an array of gouges. I only use a few of them on a regular basis, and then smaller if you're doing more delicate work. I have a little 1/4" gouge here, which I find very useful. It gets into neat corners that you want to get a sharp, crisp corner in, especially chuck bites. I use this for doing the chuck bites. Other people use parting tools, but I prefer using this. You get a far better finish. Yeah, you finish up with a variety of chucks. This is the one I use mainly for putting the blank on. It's got a screw on there, a ball saved piece. That's the main bowl I started with. That's the next one I cut out. And that's the other one. So I've got 3 bowls out of the one piece. And if you look, finish it off, sell it, better than like what that is, shavings in the back. And this is the beast in question, curved blades, large one, small one, for cutting out the bowl. Another gadget I use a lot for finishing the bottom of a bowl is a vacuum system. So this is parts. Screw it onto the lathe. Connect the vacuum cleaner, just a domestic vacuum cleaner, is on the bench. This is a rotary joint, so this stays still. I can put in a bowl like that, press the switch, and there it is. Switch the vacuum cleaner off, release the ball out of the chuck. Light, essential to have a light to see what you're doing. This is adjustable, so I can, wherever I'm turning, on the back, front, inside. Essential part of the kit that you need on. If you're setting up a workshop, make sure you have a minimum of 2 tubes. Alright, I've got 8 in here, but if you're having a fluorescent tube above your lathe, make sure it has 2 tubes in it. If you only have 1 tube, the frequency of the light and the speed of the lathe sometimes could coincide, and it appears as though the piece on the lathe is stationary. Very unsafe situation. So always have a double tube fluorescent. I'm fortunate to have a compressor with an air system round. I've several connections round. There's one behind the cabinet here, another connection here, one on that corner of the workshop, and one behind the lathe. And the beauty of this, it was a friend of mine, because I didn't want the compressor in the workshop. So he just said, more or less jokingly, why don't you put it in the ceiling? I've got a high pitch roof on this workshop. So what I did, I reinforced the ceiling above the garage door. So now my compressor is situated above the garage door on a big beam. What you don't want in the workshop, you're doing a delicate position, cut on the lathe, and suddenly the compressor kicks in and starts up. Not advisable thing, you know. You can. It's not a good safe practice. Bandsaw. Definitely need a bandsaw to cut all your blank circular or any other shapes that you want to cut. Various sizes of blades, from a very wide blade to the very small blades if you're doing some very tight curves. One of the other things that I do, I make my own polish. It's called Cowream, from Cowrie and Cream. So we've adopted the name Cowream. It's a blend of beeswax, carnauba wax and vegetable oil. And it's what I use on all my pieces. The big platter has been finished with this. It's available in, at the moment, 2 sizes. This size, and these are the 2 sizes I sell. It's available from me direct, or through Shane Hewitt, or through the Woodturners Club. I just charge more or less recovery costs for the ingredients that I use to make the stuff. The current piece I'm working on, it's a commission piece for a Romanian gentleman. It's a wall plaque, an unusual shape. It's not quite finished, but this is the shape of it. It has to follow those, more or less those shapes. So I've got this shape coming down here, which is this shape, this curved bit going up here, which is the other leg. It's a religious wall plaque. It's going to have the Star of David here, and then a spiral carving here, and the gentleman wants PowerShell putting in the grooves of the spiral, and the spiral is 3.5 turns clockwise. It has to be clockwise, not anti-clockwise. It's a piece of ancient cowrie that we got the other day. It's been sanded, so what is it? About 40 mil thick. Several years ago I got a very nice order for making bowls. I'd been supplying to a gallery in Auckland, and I'd just sent a box full of bowls down to the lady at the gallery. A week later she rang me up and she said, Granville, she said, I need some more bowls. I said, well, I've just sent you a box full. She says, I know, but this is special. She says, are you sitting down? I said, go on. She said, I would like 300 bowls. And I said, oh. I said, so it took me by surprise. I said, this was in May. I said, when do you want them for? She said, Christmas. I said, yes, I'll have to ring you back. I said, it's a large order and I need to make sure I can fulfill the order. Like if I become sick, I need a contingency plan that somebody else can take over the order so we don't let you down. And I found out that it was the owner of the Tyco syndicate from the Round the World yacht race. Unknown to me, he'd bought several of my pieces from the gallery and he requested that I make him the 300 bowls for the yachting syndicate as a thank you to all the crew and all the supporting staff of the yacht race. Just as a final piece, I do tuition for anybody that wants to get into the wood turning scene. I always recommend that I go to the person's workshop, so the training or teaching or tuition is using their equipment, and I'm here to offer advice and help to anybody that wants information on wood turning, finishing or whatever. Thank you.